Today's episode is brought to you by Crescent Plumbing Supply. Head to 6614 Olive just north of Delmar Loop and check out their new incredible showroom. With sales and design reps ready to help and a knowledgeable service desk ready to get that part for the fix you need, it will be a pleasure. Check out crescentsupply.com for inspiration, and don't forget to mention Soccer Dad Pod for that discount. Pete Sorber. To put it bluntly, he is a legend. This southside fireman who later traveled north to Flo Valley has had an impact on the game and our community that compares to the likes of Harry Kehoe, Pat McBride, and other Mount Rushmore figures of STL Soccer. Pete joined us with his Hall of Fame son Mike and talked about the early days, the secret sauce, and his famous Monday night pickup games. It was our honor to be joined by Coach Sorber, and we hope you enjoyed as well. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Soccer Dad Pod. We should do that like the Three Stooges. I'll say soccer, you say
Dad Pod.
Yeah, there you go. Soccer?
Pod. Dad.
Oh my God, you screwed it up the second time.
You were the kid in gym class when they said, we're going to number off. Remember your number.
Yeah.
1, 2. Jared, what was your number?
7.
Well, but
We
let's
stopped
be-
at 3.
Let's be frank. I would be definitely Mo. And I'd be the leader of the Stooges.
You know what? In your world, you would be the leader of the Stooges, man. I'll give you that.
Well said.
How you guys been?
Good.
It's been a long time. I've been well.
Yeah.
Been chomping at the bit to get another episode under the belt?
And today is one of those ones for us that is going to tear at the heartstrings. I mean, this is big time.
Agreed.
Are you already tearing up? Did you bring tissues today?
I did not bring any
I have a
tissues.
You have a napkin? Well, we are we're gonna kick today off. We're gonna move straight into the guests here in just a little bit because we want to make sure and spend plenty of time on these stories because there are a few to tell. Real quick, thank you to Crescent Plumbing Supply for supporting our ridiculousness. You know, it really is kind of funny. I lay in bed some nights, guys, and like laugh a little, like I can't believe they give us money to talk about this, but they do, and they're appreciative, and people have been showing up. Did you know that? I heard 2 people got the SDP discount already.
Well, that's good.
I know.
That means they spent money,
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
which is good for Crescent.
you're good for them, right? So thank you, Crescent Plumbing Supply. Also, it's indoor season. Ambush. We are going to be chatting up the Ambush Black Friday home opener. The MASL in general. They're killing the socials right now. I don't know. I'm sure you do. You follow some of it.
I do.
But there's a lot of signings, and it's not just like I don't want to diminish anybody that signs that used to sign. That might have been just somebody that was kind of a road dog. But they're signing global names that are big futsal players internationally. There's money coming in.
Well, we've said it before. I think the TST and that small-sided game it has a little niche, and it's got the ball rolling. The MASL would be foolish not to capitalize on the popularity of what's going on currently in our game.
Yep. I'm with you. So Ambush, go to their website, socials, any of that. Go get your tickets. You can bring the family. Cheap. Beers are cheap. Dippin' Dots are medium, right?
They're good though.
And you can get them. And you can get them out there. So Ambush, go check it out. And one other name I want to mention that's kind of been helping with the show and wants to get more and more involved, and that's our boy Tony Delafeld.
Yeah.
Prospect 2 player. He does a great job of highlighting the players that he's worked with. He's got 5, I think, like All-Americans right now that are kind of part of the portfolio that are moving up through the ranks. I mean, it's a great service. He seems to be really connecting the dots. Good fits, because not every wish list school is a good fit, and he does a great job of for players that are looking at the next level. Where do you want to be? Where you start might not be that place, but it gets you there.
Yeah, it's such a daunting task, and we've all are going through it right now with our boys, and having somebody there to help kind of guide through that process is a major benefit, especially when you're not sure exactly where to go. And so I agree.
And for my 2 cents, I think that I follow his socials, and the service he's providing, I think, could be invaluable to parents and families. It seems like to me on his socials, he's inking somebody and helping somebody get placed at the right fit, quote unquote. It seems like every week.
Yep. No,
So good for him.
Super impressed. Go check it out. Prospect 2, the number 2 player on any socials. You'll find him. Your name here, points of the day. One of our favorite pastimes. Zach, you got your hand
I'll
up.
go first because mine's quick and dirty. So the MLS Next Pro just ended their season, and North Texas won the MLS Next Pro Cup. That's who City 2 lost to in the semifinals. But it was an interesting story in that they were down 2-0 at halftime and came back and won that game against the Philly Union 3-2. And it just
was the game on the baseball field?
No, I don't.
The final wasn't on the baseball field, because that's where the semifinal was, and my head was about to pop off. I'm like, we're running the semifinal of our second most popular domestic league on a baseball field that has football lines cut into it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the final was not on that baseball field?
Don't believe that it was.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. It was just a throwback a little bit to, a lot of the guests that we've had in the show are players for that MLS Next 2 team here at City, and just a shout out to their, really strong season. Unfortunately, they didn't make it all the way, but the team that beat them ended up winning the championship. So I just like that.
Yeah, and I'll go. Mine is going to be brief too, somewhat brief. My your name here, point 2 of the day, is surrounding our men's collegiate game. At the time of this recording, it's Wednesday, November 13th, I believe.
Correct.
So most of the conference tournaments are down to the Final Four. Some have already inked their spot in the finals. And just a quick deal, because my nights, it's dark at 5 o'clock. I go home, I cook something. My kid's driving, so I'm not at practice. I'm watching these games on ACC, Big Ten, ESPN Plus. If you're not watching them and you're a soccer fan, you're doing yourself a disservice. But just quickly, ACC semifinals are tomorrow night, Thursday the 14th. I don't know when this will come out. I think tomorrow.
Yep, we'll be out.
Virginia plays Wake Forest. In California, new entry to the ACC is playing wait, Clemson.
California, from the Pacific Coast version of California, is in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Yeah,
it makes total
sense. It's goofy.
Love
Stanford's in that same conference now, but they didn't make it. So those are interesting matchups. Some of those games, especially in that ACC conference, are extremely high level. The facilities are beautiful, so they're not beat up fields. They're trying to play. The Big Ten. Their semifinals are finished. Michigan, who was the 7 seed, is playing the number 1 seed Ohio State on Sunday. Big Ten Network does a phenomenal job covering our men's game. Watch it. The A10, SLU, is playing today. The results will be when this airs, but they're playing George Mason. I think SLU, looking at the RPI, they need to win at least this game and probably win to get the automatic bid to make the tournament. We'll see. There's a committee for that, so I'm not going to act like I'm smart. The Missouri Valley. Missouri State's got it rolling. They are hammering kids. They are 7 in the national RPI right now, and they do nothing but win.
What's their ranking in Bundesliga 2?
They're probably like Bundesliga 5 with their roster, but Missouri State plays tonight, and then their final is coming up this weekend. I think Missouri State makes the final. They'll win. Last thing, OVC, local guys. Lindenwood, right here in St. Charles, which the Missouri State Misha, since soccer parks flooded, the high school championships will be played at Lindenwood. That's news that was announced today. But Lindenwood's in the Final Four. Watch them. They're on ESPN Plus, and so is SIU right across the river, which there's ties in this room to that. I think our guest today has coached many Salukis, or Cougars. I'm sorry, I said Salukis, Cougars.
Cougars, baby.
But 2 local teams are in that conference's Final Four. Last but not least, Big East.
GC proud. Let's hear it.
Akron.
Say it.
Embeck at Akron, Jared Embeck from Granite City. Say that from Granite City. He has got it cooking. They are the number 1 seed. They are beating the kids off the field. And if you looked at their postseason awards, they won just about everything. They had 3 or 4 on the first team. I think they had the player of the year. They had the midfielder of the year. They had the goalie of the year. They are hammers right now. So watch Akron to do really well, I think, in the NCAA tournament as well.
They're 9. They're offensive player of the year, national player, offensive player of the year. He's averaging 1.65 points per game.
Yeah, but we're a soccer pod, and we're going to get into our guests today. Watch these games, especially if you have kids that want to play, boy or girl, want to play at the next level. They need to be watching these games.
So my real quick, your name here, point of the day, Messi lost. That's it.
Atlanta.
And Brad Guzan, he should just thump anybody that gets in front of him anymore. Like if you land in the net like that, just come out swinging. Like Tyson. And what's our boy Paul this week? I want Guzan to come out like Tyson next time. It just, you kidding me? I loved it.
My thoughts are: is that a double red card for anybody else in the league but Miami?
Absolutely.
How does Suarez get away with that?
Oh, totally. Yeah, because at a minimum they're going to go back to the film, right? VAR or whatever.
Yeah.
They can always watch the film and go back and no, you know what?
That's borderline throwing hands.
Totally.
All right, we digress.
But congratulations to Atlanta.
And Atlanta has been Miami's kryptonite. That's really the only franchise that's really had any sustained success.
Well, they said something about
Miami hasn't figured them out.
They've like 3. I don't know what the stat is. Some form of 3. Only 3 losses Miami have had. Oh, by the way, they're all at the hands of Atlanta.
We should have been one of those.
What's that?
Tied.
Yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I know.
Didn't. Brings us to what we should be doing, and that is talking to our guests, because we have true St. Louis soccer royalty with us here today. The patriarch and the prodigal son are both joining us today, and you've already read your dashboard. You know who we've got today. It's really our pleasure to introduce to today our guest, Mr. Pete Sorber, and his son, Mike. Pete, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Fine. I'm glad to be here.
So after listening to 11 minutes of us talk, are you now officially regretting saying yes to this conversation?
I'm regretting what?
No, we're just messing. No, it's great to have you here. Mike, we were talking a while back, and hello to you as well. You can say hello, people. There we go. We talked a little while back about trying to set this up, and you sent some. Just a link to a video and a couple other things you talked about, in anticipation of this. And I watched it a couple times. The thing that jumped out to me, I'm gonna call you Mr. Sorber, if that's all right, and I'll call him Mike if you guys are good with that. Is what I didn't understand, because there's so much North Side lore, right? Flo Valley, the North County kids, the North County parishes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you were a Southsider.
That's true.
So were you born on the South Side? Is that where you grew up? Tell us a little bit about the early days first.
I definitely was born on the South Side. I coached in Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish. Starting out, I didn't know that I was going to be coaching. I was playing a mini league game on a Sunday, and a gentleman on the sideline who I had watched, he was much older than me, and I had watched him in sports. He was an excellent baseball player in the mini league and all that. And he came up to me and said he had this team over at Immaculate Heart, and he'd like a little help. Would I come over? And I said, well, yeah, that's fine. Where are you? He said, Francis Park. All right, that's not out of my range. It wasn't a problem. And I went over there, and I had an experience there that I'll never forget. I got out of the car and came out. They were practicing and all this type of stuff, and I come walking up, and he introduces me to the players. They're only 7 or 8 or 9 years old, whatever they are. And he says, all right, you guys get over here. I want you to hear what Mr. Sorber's got to say. And I thought to myself, I can't wait to hear what Mr. Sorber
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the way we were going to start out.
No cheat sheet, huh? No memo on.
No, but
so how old were you roughly at the time of kind of your first team from a coaching standpoint?
Well, I was in my 30s anyway. Let's put it that way. I don't know exactly when it was.
So then let's go back in time. Then your maybe introduction to the game, your participation, playing, etc. When was the formative years? When did you start playing, and what was it about the game that maybe set it apart from baseball or basketball or any other sport?
Well, when you mentioned basketball, that wasn't in too strong at that time. It was coming off of the Depression and all that type of stuff. A lot of families didn't have cars. It was cheap to go to the park, didn't cost anything. You get over there, and there was soccer in the winter and baseball in the summer. And I was brought out. My dad took me to one of the games of getting into Lang's book.
Yeah.
One of those teams, it was the Shamrocks, I think. God, I don't know when it was. It might have been 1933. I'm not sure about that. I was very young. And then I picked it up in grade school. Every neighborhood had a Catholic church in it.
Yep.
And a lot of the Catholic priests were foreign. They came over here, and they got the word right away. If you want your parish to go, you do well, and overall, you better get your kids involved in everything. And I picked it up that way.
What parish was it?
It was St. Mary and Joe.
St. Mary and Joe. Okay.
Yeah.
In South City?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
We were just 2 blocks up from Broadway.
Okay.
And Broadway was 6,300 or something south.
Yep.
It was there, and then there was one below me, which was St. Boniface. And that's where Val Palazzo came from, and Harry Kehoe. And right below that was a little Irish patch. They didn't have a church, but they didn't get along with the Germans in St. Boniface. So the bishop built them a parish, and they called it St. Columkills. I never heard of that saint. I don't know what he did or whatever.
I have a feeling you probably drank a little bit of Guinness on the side. Right?
So that was it, and I just got into watching it, started playing it. It was the only thing to play at the time. And I played in a league in 6th grade, and I was very pleased. I was the only kid that was in 6th grade. Most of them were 7th or 8th, and we did real well. I don't know if we won it, but if we didn't, we played for the final anyway, whatever it was. I'm not too sure about that. And then from that, you stepped up into juvenile, and then into junior, and then into senior as you moved along. And in the park, like I said, people didn't have cars. They didn't have a lot of money. They came to these games, and the game will be played. I don't care if it snows or rains or whatever, or if there's going to be a fight. It don't make any difference. It's going to be played. And if you were a kid watching all this, that was the big league to you.
Yeah.
Like when I hear this story, because we've talked to a few other individuals that kind of grew up roughly same generation, close in these neighborhoods in the same parishes, and what it reminds me of, guys, is Gangs of New York, right? The movie, like literally each of these gangs.
Less steampunk.
Yeah, and hearing you talk about, the Germans really didn't get along with the Irish and this, and we all know that to be true, but it's like, it's still real. And it's so funny to think about it because, like, that's one of the things, as we talk to individuals from across the country, when we talk about soccer culture, Jersey had it, St. Louis had it. There's very few regions across the country that kind of developed the way that we did with the game. Do you think that, because we're a baseball town too, did you really understand, or did you realize kind of the influence that these immigrant communities would have on, like the Hill, right? The Italians on the Hill, and obviously everything that occurred with that group.
Well,
is that our cheat sheet? Is that part of our DNA, the cheat sheet going back historically?
for some reason, I think St. Louis, you said a lot of places had that type of a development and everything, but St. Louis really had it. it was in the middle of the United States. There was people playing in California and played heavily in the East, and they would hold the national tryouts for the national team in St. Louis all the time at Public School Stadium.
Wow.
And that was really super, because we're interested now and hoping to make it up to the top and everything. And you saw guys that you had only heard of.
Yeah.
Each team, each city would send its best player or two.
Yep.
Exceptionally maybe three, and they'd come down there, and you could see what the level of the country was.
Wow.
Are we as good as this or not? And you could learn from that. We could, in a conversation, we could be talking about guys from Fall River and Philadelphia and all that type of stuff, and you wouldn't think we would know who they are or anything.
Yeah.
If futsal is the preferred youth development tool in Brazil, Spain, and Portugal, there might be something to it. Check out US Futsal Missouri on Instagram or Twitter to sign your team or child up to this nationally sanctioned and recognized futsal league. Ditch the walls, go play ball.
Yeah, well, case in point, I think you're speaking about leading up to the 1950 World Cup.
Right.
I mean, how many of those guys
5 or 6
were
starters
in those leagues that you were talking about?
Yes.
That you saw, or that, they were just neighborhood leagues. And we're going across the world in 1950 with 5 or 6 of those guys starting on an 11-man roster.
Right.
That's amazing.
And if you really were forced, if they'd have had a bus accident or something, we could have sent the next 11 out there. And I mean, they were almost as good. It was a big game in St. Louis. That's really awesome. Was. You saw those guys coming out of the locker room at Crownlet Park on the top of that hill, coming down there, and boy, you sat there and you just thought, man, I hope someday I can do that, And everybody that had a chance did.
I love it. I mean, I'm going to throw another movie reference. It's like a scene from Braveheart. They're just all coming down the hill at you, and they're just going to squash you.
It makes me wish that we could have expanded that experience outside of St. Louis and put that into other areas of the country. Because I think from a international soccer standpoint, had we developed more of that community profile for the game
through the parishes,
through your different local organizations, it might have changed things. And hearing these stories about how you as a kid back then were looking at these stars, to you, they weren't stars outside of this area, really.
True.
People really, and still to this day, we have so many people that we talk to all the time that are legends to soccer fans, but to the American public,
Harry Kehoe was one of them.
There's so many that we've interviewed and talked to right now in this room, and it's just I'm just curious, Mr. Sorber, do you look back at that time and think you always wanted to be one of those guys coming out of the locker room, but did we achieve the goals that you kind of had for U.S. soccer? Did we get there?
Oh, yeah. I think we got higher than we dreamed of at the time. Like you say, he's an example, but there's a lot of his level that there were at the time. And one of the things about bringing this along, there was 4,000 or 5,000 people at a game on Sunday. Didn't cost anything. You stood on a hill and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're a young kid, and you're playing in front of 4,000 people. They were 4 or 5
awesome.
deep,
Yeah.
all the way around the field.
So let me ask you this, because we've talked to so many people that have played underneath you, that have known you, and that you have coached and or mentored in some capacity, that point to you as kind of a North Star, as a mentor. For you, who was that? Did you have one person, or was it a group that motivated you, or that was your coaching idol, or the player that you just looked up to that inspired you to do more? Was there that one person for you?
Well, the leader of the whole thing was Harry Kehoe. Mm-hmm. And then coming out of the North End, there were a lot of names, but then you had Bobby Kehoe. And those were two boomers, And Harry would go to Europe every summer just to and see what was going on, but he was going over to see what they're doing over there. Instead of a 3-man backfield, are they using a 4 now, or who's passing to who, or what are they doing? And he'd come up, and then he was in the mail post office department. He got off about 3 o'clock, and he'd come to the park. Every group was near a park somewhere, Fairgrounds Park or Crownlet Park or Sherman Park or something like that. And they'd show up, just a pickup game to throw up. And Harry would teach you anything that was new. This is what they're doing there in this situation and that situation. And that would spread, and we'd go back to our parish or whatever and tell them, hey, we're not using a 3-man backfield anymore. You guys got to learn how to play with a 2 and things like that. It was just ripe to grow.
Very cutting edge for
Everybody
somebody
loved
going.
it.
Yeah, I mean, that's phenomenal. And just listening to the players that have played for you and reading about you and the internet clips that exist, in a time where coaching in our country for all sports was very disciplined, was very militant-like, was, fitness here and don't be late and all the things that where you were almost the coaches were an authoritarian figure. All of the people that have ever played for you call you quote unquote a player's coach, and a player's coach in your era versus a player's coach now, I know is quite of a different definition, but your style coaching as you got into your career coaching, can you talk about your style and what does player's coach mean to you?
Well, I'll tell you, if I had a style, it was developed from the game. Soccer teaches you to play. If you can't get from a coach what you need to do, you can't have a drill and have 14 guys working on how do you handle the ball if the guy playing a position is in the mud out there. There's a big puddle over there, and he's covering the best back that everybody said. And what do you do? Soccer's full of what do you do? That wasn't, when you coach it, you coach around everything. And the game, and then one of the best coaches in soccer, I don't know if other sports are the same, I think they probably are, but if you make a stupid move, and you should have gave it to me, when you look up, I'm giving you this. I didn't have to say a thing, but you knew that was wrong.
Yeah.
And you didn't forget that. If the coach told you something, maybe you remember, maybe you wouldn't. But if you looked at me and told me that you were unhappy with me, I didn't forget that. So the game was the biggest teacher we had.
Yeah.
And
somebody I know coaches very similar to that to this day, sitting at this table. We'll talk about him in a minute, but I
no, let's go ahead and bring him in real quick, because you've been sitting here, for 15 minutes or so, kind of hearing some of this recap, this trip down memory lane, in this theory, right? This motivation, the Harry effect, etc. Like when you hear this, like, is it just like a flashback for you? Is it just your childhood kind of coming back through, or do you feel it as, in framing it in what Zach was referencing, who you are today as a coach yourself? So what does hearing the recap, what does that trigger within you as Mike Sorber 2024 version?
Yeah, it is a great recap. It's great that it'll be captured on a podcast, but because my whole period of time growing up where there would be Harry Kehoe or Bob Kehoe or Pat McBride or you name it, they would sit around and talk, right? So now it's captured in a moment, which is great. But, a big part of the soccer culture in America, in a way, got lost because our other sports became bigger, American football and baseball. So they took over, where the rest of the world, soccer was the number one sport. Right. So yes, we missed out. There was a huge opportunity there, and it got lost. And now he's able to bring that back to life to say, yeah, this was an amazing time where there were 4,000 or 5,000 people at a game. everybody loved it, the passion. There were superstar players walking out of the locker room and coming down, and it inspired the next generation. And then, he became a coach, was at a community college that touched a lot of people's lives. And Harry Kehoe touched people's lives at SLU, and Bob Gelker at SIU, and Pat McBride with the Steamers and Forest Park. And we can go on and on. We can talk about high school coaches. Terry Mickler and Vince Drake and et cetera. I'll miss too many names, right?
Do you catch yourself as you are, whistle in hand on the field teaching the next generation? Do those names and those lessons, are those, do they pop up? Are they constantly there?
No.
Or is it just kind of you feeding off
sort
of
it? Everybody has their own way,
Sure.
their own personality. For sure, being around the game and Dad's practices and all these different guys, Steve Petcher, they all have stories that are great. But then when I step on the field, the thing that's most important to me is every kid that is in front of me.
Yeah.
Because each kid is different and has something different to offer, has strengths and weaknesses. And like he says, you just coach around certain things, and I don't need to tell each kid the same thing, because maybe Zach's strength is Jared's weakness, right?
Right.
So I need to tell Jared a little bit more than Zach. And too much time gets wasted in speaking to everybody. That's one thing I think he was good at. That's why you're a player's coach, because we don't waste time with a lot of words, and we get on with the game and we let the game
Police itself.
showcase itself.
I love it. So the other day I had the privilege of sitting down with Jen Cease, and we interviewed the UCLA women's head coach, Marguerite Aozasa. I butchered her last name, but Marguerite. Let me bring up something that she talked about, because we were talking about her program, kind of nationalistic styles, West Coast style versus Jersey, or Northeast versus Midwest, and she brought up the whole concept of teams and how they're recruited. And she's like, the way I see it, there's really only two styles of recruiting: teams that recruit for a system, and then teams that recruit for style. And I loved her answer and the way she talked about it. And I'm thinking about this based on what we were just talking about and how you described, you put your hands on your hips, that means they screwed up, right? Mm-hmm. And what she said was, it's really important for her to focus on style, the kind of like different brands of players, kids that can do different things. Because if you just coach to a system and the other team is beating your system, then if you put the new kids in that only play the system, you're not changing anything. So let me put that to the two of you from a U.S. standpoint, because we always talk about, when we debate us versus European powers and South American powers, where the Brazilians are super creative and the Germans are super tactical and all these cliches, and yet we don't have our own style. Is it really that important for us to figure out a style, or is it the system? How do you guys view that? How do we blend the two, given your experiences?
Well, I'll tell you one way that it blends, and we haven't touched it at all. I told you about in the afternoon, they'd show up, Harry, but like Saturday afternoon or something like that, every neighborhood had a time when everybody would come and play. So if you were 12 years old, you were playing with the guy who was 35. He's playing in the big league, and some guys are here and some are there, and you're down there. And you're watching them when they're playing and you aren't, the big names and all that type of stuff. So see what you're seeing, what is good and what is bad and all that. Now you're playing with them on Saturday with those same guys. And everybody is... You showed up, they just said, okay, they're one down, you go with them. There was no positions. They didn't care what, just show up, put the shoes on, and come on out there.
There was truly an upper field and a lower field. If you were good enough, you go up the upper field.
Yeah, there was some places had so many guys they had to use two fields. I know the kids up at McBride and that went to, what was that parish? One of the parishes. It was turning them out right and left.
St. Philip Neri?
Yeah, Philip Neri. They had, if Don Cerisi or something played with the best guys, and if you were good enough, you could come up and play on his field on Saturday when they'd fool around. If you weren't, you had to stay down here on the other field with the second string. But that's the way you learned the game. You know, I never talked to this guy. He's 10 years older than you.
Yeah.
But when you come on Saturday, you could converse with him, you could play with him, you could find out why you think he's good and what you got to work on, and that it goes back to that line I said: the game will teach you.
So let me kind of extrapolate off of Mr. Sorber's answer there to you, Mike. Do you think kids aren't playing lowercase p playing enough? In addition to all of this training, all this formal, structured environment that we're all part of, that we're all literally nose deep in, are we missing the simplicity of going out in the neighborhood and just
putting 2 shirts down?
Yeah, dropping shirts and skins and playing?
That would be a simple way to say yes, but this is a society issue, so it's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. We can't go back to those days for safety issues, transportation, the way neighborhoods are set up. The city was much different, right? So what are they doing in Brazil or in Germany or in the rest of the world? Spain. Yeah, in some way, no, we're not missing a style. We're not missing tactics, so to speak, but we are missing soccer IQ. Yeah. And so what is the answer for that? If I could just sum it up in one sentence, that would solve all our problems, but it's not that easy.
Oh, so you're not going to drop it on us here today? Oh, my gosh.
Well,
we brought you here for one thing, Mike, just to answer that.
One answer.
But it makes sense. Soccer IQ, go ahead.
It does. Well, we had another guest on who was from Switzerland, I believe, who talked about the exact same thing, that the biggest difference he sees between American players, not all of them, but in general, and some of the more traditional European players, is that soccer intelligence. And that's where things start to break down. So for you, Pete, and for you, Mike, we can't go back, right? We're not going to go back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s where people lived in close proximity to one another in neighborhoods
and liked their neighbor
and
barbecue
they
together.
still didn't like everybody. We already established that.
I mean, how deep we want to go here?
We can't go back, but if we can look forward, what steps do you think we could take to improve on that IQ? What things could we implement? And maybe it's just at the club level. Maybe it's just at the high school or that age group. But I'm just curious if you've given any thought to that. I'd love to hear your answer
it's
there.
definitely at a young age. Look, every club puts a lot of energy and a lot of resources into development. So we don't want to just kill everybody, for sure. No way. And things have gotten better. Clearly, we have better players. We have more players playing in Europe. It will help if we can find a way to get kids to play in the different age groups, and maybe not just their in their only age group that they can play up and play down. But yeah, it's finding an environment and a culture and creating that for the kids to be challenged, to grow in their own way. And, when we say soccer IQ, yes, Messi has soccer IQ. He's the best in the world, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets. But take a Puyol, for example, or, goalkeepers, outside backs, whatever it is. Maybe they're not viewed as the greatest players in the world, but they have defensive IQ where they can just anticipate things and read the game. They have an intensity to the way they do it. They have a way of competing every day and wanting to get better. So that's why I think it's very difficult just to have one answer and say, here it is. We need a methodology, blah, blah, blah. So if the kids can play and can compete and we can create the culture and the environment, that will help. We just haven't maximized that yet.
Pete, excuse me, Pete, I'm going to ask you a closing question before we take a quick break here. It's one of my favorite questions. You guys know it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
In your days of, coaching all of these phenomenal players, what was the thing that you looked for as a coach or just as a soccer fan, that when you saw a kid play, in your head, in your heart, you're like, that kid has it? If you had to describe that, what was that when you saw that player in your kid?
That's the thing. When you're watching these kids play, that what you talk about when you say coaching style or what drills and this, that, and the other stuff, that isn't where it's at. It's you creating some situation for each kid, and each one may be different. He may made reference to one or two, but you might have 5 or 6 or 7 different levels of whatever going on at the same time. So when you practice, you got to create a practice where you play.
Yeah.
They want to play. They don't want to put them clones and everything. So, but each kid is not playing the same game. If maybe your problem is every time you get the ball, you pass it over here. When you play today, I want you to pass it everyone over there. I don't care if there's anybody over there or not. Pass it over there.
Play it out of bounds.
Okay. And then I tell you something else. What your problem is, you never dribble the ball. All you do is long ball it. Yeah. Dribble every ball you get. I don't care if you're going to lose it. And I tell him something the opposite. So each kid's doing a different thing, but play. And that way they pick up off of one another, and they can take your idea sometime and expand on it and make it better.
Well,
I love it.
And to JB's, before we go to break, what are the characteristics of it? Like when you saw Steve Petcher at 17 years old, why did he have it? What did he do different than the other center backs at the time?
He had all the stuff that Michael talked about. It was just there. When you saw it, you knew it.
Okay.
You couldn't put your finger on it, but you could see just what he's doing. He wins every ball. He just sums. How did he know to be there?
Competitiveness.
How come he was back there in front of the goal? And
yeah.
But you see, he understands more than these other guys do.
He passed the sniff
Soccer
test.
IQ.
I love it. Well, here, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk Flo Valley and more. We've got a couple other topics here. Thanks for listening. Like, review, follow, share. We'll be right back with the Sorbers ×2. See ya.
The term staycation was really invented by soccer moms. Located 1 hour and 7 minutes from the Arch, the Music Box Chalet at Innsbruck is a hidden gem. Buried in 3 acres of private woods, the Music Box has a master suite for just you, a loft and second bath for them, and a vinyl collection to meet your every mood. The full-size kitchen will easily accommodate 3 to 12 bottles of rosé, while the huge fire pit seating area will keep the big kids busy. Golf, fishing, kayaking, pickleball, or simply reading a book with Mother Nature, all at your fingertips. Visit either VRBO or Airbnb to find the Music Box Chalet. And now, back to those guys.
Okay. We're back. Soccer Dad Pod. Second half with Mr. Pete Sorber and his son, Mike. I love it. Sorber Day Out. And Jared, you didn't bring any beer today.
No, I didn't. I thought Mr. Strunk would have the beers for us. But, maybe that's just at
I
the
guess
soccer field.
we should thank him right now. You know, he was kind enough to open the doors over here at their. It's just their little facility.
Is this first class or what?
Humble abode for the worldwide technology.
Yeah, apparently Worldwide's doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think they're all right. Based on their Christmas decorations, I think they're fine.
I mean, we are a podcast, and in
my trailer,
in our finest hour, we are typically found at Maggie O's or Amsterdam Tavern. Today, we're actually in a podcast studio. No offense to my podcast studio. But it's not.
It's not this.
No, it's not. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
But you got goals, things to look forward to.
Well,
I used to have all this. I used to have this all down at Gaslight,
true.
but I got rid of all
True.
that.
I tell you what, I'm really excited about the second half because we have to touch on and get into just the tremendous amount of success over Mr. Sorber's coaching career at Flo Valley, the junior college. I mean, I know he'll be the first one to say it's not his accolades, it's his team. But we're going to break that down a little bit, Mr. Sorber, because they are your accolades along with your team. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's start off with the great trip north. You're a Southsider. You grew up on the South Side, and you get the call, and they're like, "Well, we got this gig up at Flo Valley." How'd that play out? And kind of what went through your mind being a true Southsider, being asked to take all of your soccer talents and give it away to the North Side for free?
Okay. Harry Kehoe went to Cleveland High School with a fellow named Bill Miller, who was a track star at Cleveland High School. And they were close classes or whatever, so they met one another there. And he knew nothing about soccer, and it didn't make any difference whether Harry knew anything about track. That wasn't necessary. It was the idea that he was moving on from coaching track at Beaumont to the junior college, and he knew, we got to play soccer. And I don't know anything about soccer, but Harry Kehoe was in my class in history X amount of years ago. I'll call him. So he calls Harry. Harry says, "Yeah, okay, I'll come out and help you out." So he did a year, and then St. Louis, the job opened at St. Louis U. So then he said, "Now what do I do, Harry? You're the only soccer person I know." Harry says, "Well, I know another guy out of South St. Louis that he's a fireman, and he's got every other day off, and every other weekend you get 3 days in a row or something. He's got some time, and maybe he would help you out on that." He says, "Would you bring him up here or call him or do something?"
Yeah.
So he called me and told me, you got to go up and talk to this man, da-da-da-da. Okay, I was finished with the high school then. For 2 years, I couldn't continue there because the state put in a rule that if you didn't have God knows what, you weren't allowed to coach kids.
Yeah.
So I went up there, and I'm going by Sherman Park. I'm heading for where Flo Valley is,
Yeah.
And I thought, why don't I just turn around and go home? I'm not coming up here 4 or 5 days a week, But, what the heck? Let's see it. I've never seen it. I don't know what it's like up there. So I go up there and I talk to this guy, and then about an hour later, I'm driving home, and I get about to the same location, and I tell myself, I told him I would do this. Am I nuts?
He left you with a pretty good crop, though, did he not? He had some success, and
well, they had got to the finals, I think, the year before.
Yep.
And the parish over by the airport, they had just won the national junior championship. I forget what that parish is over there, and so there were winners up here, and there was so much talent. The guys in the South were just as good as the guys in the North, but their numbers weren't the same.
Yeah.
The North End, all those guys moved out of North St. Louis and went out towards Florissant and everything like that. So the parents were also athletes, and they were union people. They were all trades.
Yep.
And all that type of stuff. And they built that North End up like you wouldn't believe. So they were coming out of the schools, 4 or 5 guys that were good on every block.
Yeah.
They kicked every afternoon in the street, whatever. And they tell you today, that's why they reached the levels they reached. And the numbers were so big that the one year, Quincy won, SLU won, Flo Valley won. And who was the other one? There was four national winners in 1 year.
Umsel, Umsel.
Umsel or Kudus.
Yeah. And I just like during that era, and we can talk about the 10 national championships and all of the thing that is resounding to me reading about that era and that time and the lives that you got to touch specifically. You had 2 to maybe even 4 All-Americans on your team every year. Oh. And so I hope our listeners even maybe pretend to understand, but having that amount of All-Americans, meaning a national award on one team every year, is just unheard of. I mean, talk about that. I mean, how fortunate enough were you to develop those kids, either to have them 1 year or maybe even lucky enough to have them 2 years before they went to a 4-year university. You had 3 to 4 All-Americans on your team every year. That's unheard of.
Well, like I say, you develop it, your team off of guys that are coming from places where they were all winning. They were so many good players that you couldn't get some of them on the field. We were lucky there. And I always did say, when you got the good players, you make the coach look like a wonder. When you get pitchers, and a bunch of those guys like that, you'd come out to practice and say, "What are we going to do today, guys? What do you want to do?
Play.
What do you like?
You guys want to play cards? You want to play bocce bar or something?"
I want to jump into something a little bit more of a structured question, which is, you talked about Francis Park, you talked about Carondelet Park, you talked about how those those parks were kind of a training ground for a lot of the teams that ended up developing into the Kudus and the club scene that we have today. But you kind of started something up at Flo Valley as well by inviting kids to come out and play in the gym on certain days of the week. And you could actually see these kids now in your environment.
Right.
How did that start, and how did that help kind of develop what Jared was talking about into these perennial All-Americans?
Well, again, they weren't just Flo Valley kids that would come on Monday night or something like that. They were there from everywhere. Some of them were going away to school, but they'd come up there early in September and say, "You care if we play?" "No, come on, and that reached a point where when you run into a bunch of guys from SLU years later on, and you want to talk some soccer, they didn't want to talk about the championships that they won in SLU. They wanted to talk about those Monday night games. Everybody lived for those suckers, and you'd play all night. I made the teams. I knew who was gonna. If you and he don't get along, and you're probably going to fight one another, I'll put you on the same team. So I picked it that way. If you could score and you couldn't, well, that's good. Rather than put 2 scores together, put a score with a guy. But so I made the teams.
Truly pick up soccer.
And it was, and they loved it. And it got down to the last game. Next goal wins. Oh, boy. Now it turned into a heck of a game. But we never had a fight, and it was, again, the levels were, some guys were seniors in college and some were just juniors in high school. But they were picking it up, passing it down and picking it up and that time. And they loved it. And my boss, Mr. Miller, he couldn't have been a nicer guy in the world. I say, we need this. I'd like to use the gym Monday night for this. He said, do it. We have to get it. We need one of these. Get 2 of them.
Mike, what do you remember about those times? Because you were probably a young kid growing up in the game, getting to play in those games. What do you remember?
Yeah, well, I was really little, so Dad and we always had a one-man advantage because he and I equaled 1. He was a little bit older, and I was small. But the level was unbelievable. And like he said, the rivalries were fantastic because guys were coming from all over, different parishes, and you had you would compete against each other a lot, but now you were teammates and you wanted to beat the other team. So at the end of the night, usually there would be 3 teams, but back in the old days, they might have had 5 or 6 teams. He had Sudoku trying to figure out how to get everybody on the floor. And then he'd have numbers 1, 2, and a blank piece of paper. So if you drew 1 and 2, that was the semifinal, and the blank piece of paper, you were automatically in the final.
Wow.
And so that semifinal was a war to get to the final, and that you could talk about that game all week. So like he said, yeah, I mean, the memories that everybody has, who knows what you did with Gallagher or Bush or SLU or SIU, but you remember those Monday nights at Flo Valley.
We've had people say,
Oh, yeah.
Zach, go ahead. We've had people say that SLU would play Michigan State or SLU would play SIU in the Browns boot game, but then they'd go to that Monday night game, and there might have been a higher level in that Monday night game than any of those games we're talking about.
Yeah, because you had the top talent.
That's awesome.
You only had 15 guys there. You had 15 of the best, where if you were at SLU or SIU, as good as you were, you still had a couple guys that were a little below the level. They couldn't play a flow.
They wouldn't have gotten it. So what I've seen in the time that we've been here with you, Pete, is going back to the 30s as a kid and seeing those guys and talking about these Monday night games and hearing Mike, you talk about it, the joy that you guys exude, and our listeners can't see it, but it's infectious. And when we talk to guys who played in those games on Monday night, and we ask them, how did you keep going? Like, how did Steve Ralston's the guy, those kind of guys? It's the love of the game that they always talk about. And it always seemed kind of oh, come on, really, the love of the game. That's why. But when I see your faces talking about this and the passion, it's clear. That's an absolute factor that is missing, I think, in a lot of what we were talking about earlier. That passion, that pride that goes into going out there, and you don't care what color shirt you're wearing, you're going to win that game.
Yeah, I think that when we look at that time frame, the disproportionate successes that St. Louis had in general, Flo, SLU, even Quincy, SIU at the time, everybody's winning. Even all of our funeral home teams, they were winning too. You name it.
Beverage companies.
And I do think that there's a common thread, because not only were those teams winning, your teams in particular, winning national championships, but individually we had players that were excelling beyond the college game, going pro, going to the national team, and spreading their wings far beyond these parish expectations as when they were little kids. And the common denominator, when we look at any block of time, there's a disproportionate number of players that hit those levels of success then compared to any other generation. And these games occurred, these pickups, these kind of cultural moments. When you look back at it, where do you see your thumbprint? Is your thumbprint your personality as a coach? Is your thumbprint your coordination, within those Monday night games? Is it more of your empathy with the individual players? If you think through the names, when you look back and you reflect, because it's such a special time, where do you think you had the most impact on that generation?
Well, the exposure, you said I started in 6th grade. So I was playing all the time, on days during the week and in the Sunday game and all of that. So you're picking them up, and you're playing with these people. You're learning from them and all that, and that goes on for years. Now, when you get up to the junior college, you've been playing for quite a bit, and that junior college was the ripest thing in the world when they put that baby out. Everybody couldn't go to SLU and couldn't go to SIU or whatever, I don't know, Umsel and that. But when they put that up, there was a lot of great players. Because like I said, the North End was turning them out like a printing press, coming from all these parishes that were so good, winning national championships. And now all of a sudden they're showing up and trying to get onto the team. They were great in the neighborhood, But when I went to the junior college, there was a lot of guys told you, they would say, man, when I came there, I thought I was hot stuff. He doesn't take me in about a half hour. I thought, holy mackerel, this is a different game here.
Wow. You know, and I know we're getting long in the episode, and I would kick myself in the behind if I didn't ask this question. Fast forwarding a little bit, we get into those early 90s, and your boy who's sitting at the table was clipping at a high level, and you being a lifelong soccer family, you and your wife, Mrs. Sorber. Can you talk about the 90s and leading into watching your son go into a World Cup? Our beautiful game gets held here in North America, and then we come out of that World Cup, and your boy Mike is arguably or is the MVP for our team in the 94 USA World Cup. What did that mean to you and your wife, being a lifelong soccer player and seeing your boy do what he did in that World Cup?
Well, you're looking at it strictly for his standpoint. You know what he did. You saw the work he was putting in. How many times he said, Dad, take me up to school. I want to kick against the wall. You know, say, boy, he paid a heck of a price, and he's getting pretty good.
Yeah.
And reached a point where you say, my God, he might get something out of this, you know. And it's not something athletes don't like to run around and I don't want to show you what my kid did today.
Yeah.
They don't ever say anything. Inside, they're very proud, and they know what lights lit to get him where he's getting there. But you don't run around bragging about it. But you're sure sad, happy inside when you see it. You know, he was when he made the national team the first time. Bora Milutinovic was made the coach.
Yep.
And Slew was playing down it was in Florida, playing in the semifinal game or whatever it was. And I know I'm sitting in the stands and I noticed, there's that new coach.
Yeah.
He's back about 3 or 4 rows, a couple of I'm watching him. Keep my eye on it, you know. And there was all kinds of people then coming up to shake his hand or introduce themselves and all that type of stuff. So there was a lot of distractions there, I thought, for him as he's watching this game, looking for, I'm not going to say he's looking for players. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. But he was there, and he apparently saw Michael, in my mind, because he asked him to come to the tryout. And I remember driving him down 270. We were just around the Merrimack territory. When I told him, I said, now when you get out here, play your game. That's what he saw. And I can't believe that he saw what turned him on with all these distractions he's had. But he saw something there about you that he wants. So don't think you got to be wonderful. Just be what you are, because that's what he went after. He saw you and said, I'm going to invite that kid to the practice. And so I said, don't try to think you got to dribble everybody or get 6 goals, or just be what you are.
Do you remember that conversation, Mike, on 270?
Yeah, I do.
He told you, he put his hands on his hips and said, don't mess up.
Yeah, I mean, it was an exciting time, obviously, getting the call. And then when you go in there, yeah, you had that little bit of advice to just go in and be yourself, because those were my strengths, right? And, you know, when you talk about the it thing, if you have a decent eye for it, it stands out, I think. And so, yeah, that was Dad's specialty, was putting the its together. And then Bora, I think, also had a good eye for certain things to put a group together and then step on the field in 94 that could succeed.
Let me ask you guys a question, because you both have been extremely and have been, you know, ever since I've met you, Mike, in particular, very, very, very modest, very simple and direct, you know, matter of fact. And, you know, I see where you get it. You know, it's just the simplicity in which you guys describe the game and all of these experiences. But just let me, if you're willing to talk about it or not, that's fine. But did you have that moment of just the two of you, just father and son, after making the national team? The first time maybe that you saw him put on the Stars and Stripes, the kit, did you have that post game, maybe a week later or whatever, where you just sit around and have that stogie and like, yeah, Dad, I did it. Thank you. Did you have that moment? Do you remember? And what was it like for you, Mr. Sorber, when, again, first time you hear that national anthem playing and your son is standing there ready to do what he does?
Well, having been an athlete, I knew to stay a distance from everything. Be careful what you say. And if you're giving him advice, or I don't want to give him advice. I don't think he wants to hear it today. You're trying to judge what you would want if you were in his shoes. So therefore, you sit back most of the time, because it's not the time to be a critic. I don't think.
Mike, to you, when did you go to him? Because inevitably, I have to believe you did. Where there was a thing, was there a point where you're like a culmination of a thank you moment that was special at that level when you're, clipping at the top? What was that like?
And were you having emos?
Yeah. Was it over thin crust pizza?
Like Halls Ferry Inn was the North County pizza for us. Yeah, there wasn't a moment, no, because, I mean, as you can see, the way we interact, this is most days. So, it's obviously great that you can step on the field, represent your country. It was in the U.S., so they were there. Denny Long and Bruce Hudson helped me out because I wasn't making a lot of money even playing for the national team, but they gave me a stipend, so to speak, to represent, and that paid for their flights and their tickets to go to the game. So that was great. And then the World Cup final was a fun moment for us. Energizer, the new sponsor of the city stadium, they wanted to have some of the players from the U.S. Go to an event. They had some kids, and they would give us, have us at the final. We'd run out with the trophy and some stuff like that. So I said, okay, I don't want any money, but will you give me one more ticket to bring my dad? So we got to go out to California, and they had a little camp. We went to Disneyland, and then we went to the stadium to watch Brazil against Italy, and I had a lanyard on like we have getting in worldwide here, and he had nothing. But we had his ticket. But I said, just follow me. And it was a little bit different back then. But security was pretty tight.
Pre-TSA.
And so, it was at the Rose Bowl, and the warm-ups were going on. So I said, come on, let's go watch a little bit of the warm-up. Being down on the field now, I said, you were up in the press box watching the game, but now you get to come down on the field. Yeah, it's pretty cool walking out of the tunnel. Imagine 90,000 people. They're excited. The spotlight's on you. So just stand here. I have to go back. We're going to run out with the players with the World Cup. Pele was there, and he's standing there. And everybody's looking at this guy because he doesn't have a Brazil warm-up on or Italy. He just has, some clothes, no lanyard, no wristbands.
He's got like a Gallagher top or something on there. Like.
They're thinking, well, he's a little bit older. He must be somebody. He's here.
That's a great story.
Yeah. So we ran out with the World Cup and got up on stage. Whitney Houston was singing with Bobby Brown. Jeez. And I turn around for some reason. And in the front row, on the 50-yard line, was Mike Music and Harry Kehoe. Nice. So I waved to those guys. There's two guys from St. Louis. And come back, grab Dad, finished whatever we were going to do. And I said, okay, come on, let's go back up into the press box because it was a hot day.
Yeah.
It was a hot day. And, we found a place to sit and open the window and watch the World Cup final together. So There were no words spoken, but that was a cool moment.
That's a pretty cool moment.
Yeah.
In closing for me, a lot of eras, a lot of decades here. Why is the denim jersey that they wore in '94 with the stars the best United States jersey ever, or is it not? Or do you like the one with the diagonal stripe from the '50s? No. What's your favorite USA jersey?
Oh boy, that's hard to say. I don't know, but that one that had the stripe, that everybody in the world had that. Kudus dressed like Kudus. The Italians, you knew that they were the hill. They had 2 or 3 different changes, but you always knew that that's them again. That type of stuff. So it was just that created a tremendous add to the games, because you've been watching this team play for years, and now I'm going to play against them or play with them.
What about you, Mike? Like the jersey, because I think Marcella on this show was like, when they brought you guys the denim jerseys, and it wasn't well received in the locker room
at all, because
because they're awful.
Red, white,
Right.
blue is
Right.
beautiful, right? And you just thought, oh my gosh,
I love it now.
Yeah, but it really stands out. It's something unique. Fashion is different today. It's more creative. Brands, everything has evolved. That I don't know that if it's so bad that everybody loves it, or if in its own unique way it was just great and we just didn't recognize it at the time.
It's like Crocs.
At
Dignity
the time,
goes through the holes.
At the time, it would have been like parachute pants and rolled up jean bottoms, right?
Well, yeah.
It's all awful.
I just have to say one thing real quick, and it's not a question. It's more my parting statement is that we talked about the joy that you showed, Pete, from an early age until now. You coached so many people, and the list would be, we could spend all day just talking about the people that went through that gym at Flo Valley, the kids that you coached that went on to play in college or pro or that are coaching now. But that love of the game, and Mike, this is kind of a testament to both of you. My son now plays for you, Mike, and he has that love again. And for a while, that was hard to come by. And I'm not speaking just for myself when I say that full circle moment is happening back in St. Louis again. And it's coaches like you, Pete, that have coached your son, and Mike now, the kids that you're coaching. It's so amazing that we have this culture here in St. Louis to say that. And just a testament and a thank you to both of you.
Yeah, look, it's a great game. There's so much to love about it. It's entertaining. It's you have the highest highs and the lowest lows, but man, it's so creative and so great, and it's great that so many people can get that joy from it. So yeah, it's great to be a part of it.
Yeah, I love that, because it's one of those things. Pete, you are. We talk about this often. We've had the privilege to talk to Pat and Patch and so many names. I mean, there's a lot of them. You're one of those names that is undoubtedly kind of a foundation brick. And we use the reference of the new stadium of St. Louis City and City Park, and the quote crown jewel of St. Louis soccer is now our pro team. But the reality is the foundation of that whole stadium, literally was built on the work that guys like you did. So really, I'm only saying that as I want you to know that's how we feel, and as a thank you. And in parting, the breakdown, tough, hard question is, when you lay in bed at night, do you view yourself as a Southsider or a Northsider?
Oh, that's a tough one. That was one of the main things, coming from the South, you thought the North was horrible. But then after I got up there, I found out they're exactly the same. The same buildings are the same, the flats with the flat roof and the hot and everything. The
Pizza's pretty good up here.
It was fine, yeah. to the point that when I retired, and I different reasons for this, but when I said, well, we're going to have to move out of the neighborhood because the neighborhoods are changing here, but we just got to move down the street. I don't want to go down to South St. Louis. And my wife still will let you know, if you come by, she'll let you know that she'd like to have stayed south.
I love it, man. This has been just an incredible pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Mike, thanks for helping set this up and adding your insights as well. It's great stories. Really just wish you the best of luck moving forward. And well, actually, let me ask one more question. Final. How fun is it to watch your son? Like, do you go to the games now and watch him standing on the sideline? Do you just kind of put your hands on your hip as he's down there doing his thing? Or do you just relax?
Keep your mouth shut and you're just as proud as you can possibly be,
I love it.
Happy for him that he's reached what he was striving for,
I love that. Well, congratulations, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Soccer Dad Pod.
Let me
catch.
say this. We've said a whole lot, but I don't know if it's the game or whether it's you people. I don't know exactly what it is, but I could talk now for 4 more hours about some phrase of it,
Well, Mike's buying beers at socials, so that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what. I mean, you guys heard it here. We will have a part 2 here in the near future. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got to go now. Soccer Dad Pod. Like, review, follow, share. Boys, you did a good job today, Jared.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Zach.
Thanks.
You too. Mr. Sorbers, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for having us. And sure enjoyed it.
Thank you.
When we were young, but now